So there is much to say about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Very little time to say it in. So I'm going to focus today on those aspects of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's preaching that were reflected in Srila Prabhupada's preaching, and that Srila Prabhupada took as the parameters for setting up his own mission. We'll start with a little bit about the history of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, just to honor the day. Today is his disappearance. Actually, on the tithi of his disappearance, it was New Year's Day. He actually left early in the morning on the day of New Year's, January 1st. But now, by the calendar, the lunar calendar, it changes. But that was actually his disappearance. We all know he was born to the family of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur had prayed for someone to help him in his preaching mission. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a very adamant preacher against the distortions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. He spoke very, very vocally. He challenged many very big opponents and defeated them, but still he felt inadequate to do what needed to be done. There was such a huge task to be done. Lord Chaitanya's movement was being challenged in many ways and distorted in many ways. And so he was praying for help from Krishna. Please send him somebody who would assist him in his preaching mission. And in answer to this prayer, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur appeared. There were several signs at the beginning when he was first born. The umbilical cord was wrapped around his body like a sacred thread. And then when he was 6 months old, the Rathayatra cart, because he was born in a building that was on the Grand Road, which is the road that the Rathayatra cart goes on during the Rathayatra in Puri. And so the cart stopped in front of his house for 3 days. On the third day, his mother came out and brought the baby to take darshan. He was 6 months old at the time. And the pujaris took the baby and put the baby at the feet of Jagannath. And Lord Jagannath's garland fell off and garlanded the child. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur became more and more convinced from the very beginning that his son was, in fact, sent by Krishna to assist him with the preaching mission that he was working on, and that he needed strong help, and he saw that this boy was going to do that. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, by the time he was 7 years old, he had memorized the whole Bhagavad Gita. It was said that he could read anything, and anything he read, he would memorize. And so Prabhupada called him, and he was called, in general, a walking encyclopedia, because he would just sit in various places and just read, and he would read his father's books, and he became extremely learned and able to deal with any circumstance, either materially or spiritually. He was an undisputed champion, and actually, when he started to take up the mission of defeating the impersonalists, the people would walk on the other side of the street when they saw him coming, because they were afraid that he would challenge them and then they would get defeated. So they would see him coming, they'd walk away. He was called the Simha Guru, the Lion Guru. There was one in 1911. He took his father's place. His father was supposed to speak on the topic of Brahman and Vaishnava, which was one of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Bhaktivinoda, and Srila Prabhupada's main basis for their preaching work, because this argument that only caste Brahmins, only people born in Brahmin families were capable of performing puja, of acting in the Brahminical capacity, and that somebody who had a lesser birth wasn't qualified to take up the process of pure devotional service. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was scheduled to speak. He became sick. He was in anxiety. Who's going to take up this this challenge, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati arose to the occasion, and he went and he defeated the Smarta Brahmins that had assembled there. There was quite a debate, and at first he praised the Brahmins tremendously, and then they were thinking, yes, this guy really knows what he's talking about. He's saying how wonderful we are, and we agree with him on that. But then he changed the mood of the discussion, and he just started to talk about what a real Brahmin was, what a Vaishnav was, what the relationship between the two were. Then they didn't feel so happy. There was some argument, but ultimately Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur defeated them. And it was interesting to me that when he came out of the assembly, there were so many people that were very, very happy and very appreciative of the presentation that he made. So everybody wanted to touch his feet. You know, there was like masses of people that wanted to touch his feet. And so the police, they couldn't get these people under control. We have a similar experience sometimes here, where they just couldn't get them under control. So what they did was very interesting. What the police did was they took Bhaktisiddhanta, they carried him out, they put him in a back room, and they washed his feet. And then with the water that they washed his feet, they added a bunch of other water, several buckets of water. And then they went outside and they threw it on everybody. So then everybody got the water from Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's foot wash on their head. And they were very happy. And also Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was also happy. And the police were also happy, so it was very nice. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, as we know, he took initiation from Gorkashore Das Babaji, and that's another story in itself. But suffice it to say that he was very, very determined to take initiation from Gorkashore Das Babaji. He really appreciated his simplicity in his practice of Krishna consciousness and his complete dedication to the worship of Lord Chaitanya and the worship of Radha and Krishna. He had met Gorkashore Das Babaji on several occasions because Gorkashore Das Babaji used to attend Bhagavatam classes that were given right over here by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur recommended Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur expressed affection for Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for Gorkashore Das Babaji, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur encouraged him and said, yes, you should take initiation from him. You should take him as your spiritual master, which after some trials, 3 or 4 trials, finally he said that if I can't get initiated by you, then there's no purpose in my life. What am I going to do with myself? And then Gorkashore Das Babaji accepted him as a disciple. So at first he did a vrat. Before he began his active preaching mission, he did a vrat, and he chanted 194 rounds a day for 7 years. Some say 9 years. Anyway, he chanted for a long time. And he chanted 194 rounds a day, trying to prepare himself to go out into what he had been warned by his spiritual master: whatever you do, don't go to Kolkata. It's a terrible place. Kali lives there, and it's very difficult to do Hari Bhajan there. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a preacher, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, taking up in his stead, was also an adamant preacher, and he saw it as a challenge. But before he went, he wanted to prepare himself. So he did this vrat, and he sat in a little hut out in the middle of the field, and he chanted just every day. He ate off the floor. 1 meal a day. They say he ate like a cow, so that means off the floor. And he did this vrat for 7 or 9 years, and then he felt he was ready, and he went to Kolkata to begin the founding of the Gaudiya Math, which took off in time. So altogether, at the age of 44, that was when that vrat took place. And then he went and began his preaching mission actively. He opened 64 different maths, and he opened temples in Burma, England, and Germany. We know about the England one. It wasn't so successful, but he was determined, and he tried to send people as much as possible. He wanted people to go to the West and preach. And Srila Prabhupada definitely took up that same mood. I want to read something here. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur met with those devotees he was sending out to preach in other countries. And he gave them a little pep talk. And so at the end of that pep talk, it was very interesting what he said. He said, "Those nations to whom you are going for the propagation of the chanting of Hari are mounted on the summit of proficiency in all affairs of the world. They are practiced in the exercise of their rational judgment, are endowed with the quality of good manners, should maintain our hope unshaken that they will prove to be the worthiest recipients of the herd of transcendental voice, if we unlock to them the gates of the natural exhibition of abiding argument and enduring judgment." I'll translate this in a minute. "If we unpack our baggage of the genuine discourse of Hari by relying on the qualities of forbearance, it will certainly receive the garland of welcome from the hearts of nations gifted with keen intelligence." I often used to pray, I still do sometimes, that I was glad Srila Prabhupada spoke very simply, because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur often didn't, although often he did. But he was a very erudite scholar, and he spoke, like you hear here, this is just a small sample, in a very elevated English manner. In English. So what he was saying, that these people that we're going to preach to, these countries that we're going to, they've got it together. In terms of technology, they're very advanced. And in terms of their learning and their manners and their way of dealing with people, also they're qualified. He didn't say, you're going to go meet with the Malechas over there, these fallen, disgusting, degraded souls, but try to do the best you can. No, that's not what he said. He said these people, if they become devotees, they'll be very powerful assets to Lord Chaitanya's mission. So if we can rise to the occasion and speak to them in a manner befitting preachers of Chaitanya's mission, appealing to their intellect and appealing to their intelligence and their good manners, their way of looking at the world, then we'll be able to harness their energy and use it in Lord Chaitanya's mission. And they will become very powerful assets. If we can unpack the baggage of the genuine discourse of Hari by relying on the qualities of forbearance, it will take us some time. They may not take to it immediately, but we'll certainly receive the garland of welcome from the hearts of nations gifted with keen intelligence. So these people, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was saying, they have intelligence, and if we can get them to hear from us, if we can get them to receive the message by approaching them according to their ability, their intelligent ability to receive it, then they will garland us, they will receive us nicely, and they will welcome us. And that was also Srila Prabhupada's mission. When he went to the West, he saw that everybody was very degraded, but he also saw a qualification. He saw a qualification that these people were, certain people were, although they had the epitome, as far as he could see, the epitome of material wealth, material technology, material finesse. By the way, when Srila Prabhupada went to America, when our Srila Prabhupada went to America, there were no cell phones, there were no computers, there were no MP3 players, there were no CD players, and yet still he saw that we were, the West was very advanced, very intellectually progressive, and he saw that despite that, people were not satisfied, and he saw that as a qualification. When he saw the hippies, he thought, these people, they are not attracted to all this material glitter, all this, they call it bling, all this material bling. They're not attracted to that, And that is a qualification. We should notice that this is their qualification, that they are not attracted to the material bling. They don't want it. They don't want a washing machine. They don't want a car. They don't want a 9-to-5 job. They're looking for happiness. It's true, they're misguided. They don't know where to find it. But they're looking for it elsewhere, and not in gross material life. And so if I can give them somehow or other, if my words can enter into their heart and inspire them to take up the process of Krishna consciousness, then they'll become satisfied, because they'll find the ultimate goal of life, and their intellect will be stimulated, and they'll be able to become adamant preachers. They'll carry the torch of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Gaudiya mission into the future. And so that was Prabhupada's idea. Even before he left for America, that was his idea. And it was also the idea of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur when he sent these people. He said, "We have not been actuated by any attempt of rivalry or hostility in undertaking this propaganda. This should always be borne in mind. We should call at the door of each and every seeker of the truth, which he saw to be everybody. We should knock on everybody's door, because everybody is a seeker of the truth. Only some people don't know it." Once in an airport, Srila Prabhupada was asked by a reporter, "What's the difference between your disciples who are all sitting here and all the other people in the airport?" Prabhupada said, "My disciples know that they are servants of Krishna, and everybody else hasn't figured it out yet." So this was also Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's preaching to his people. Go out there, and you're not going there like the British came to England, the British came to India, right? That you people are low class, you don't know anything, you're uncivilized heathens. We need to give you the real knowledge of Christianity. We need to save you from your low class existence. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is saying, no, that's not our attitude. We're not going out of malice. We're not going disrespectfully. We're going with the mission of enlightening them, helping them to understand that their goals in life will be achieved by coming in contact with the true knowledge of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So his attitude was respectful, and he encouraged his people to go to the door of each and every seeker of the truth, bearing on our heads the baggage of the real truth to be offered to them. It is no business of ours to be elated or discouraged by the praise or neglect of any person. We must be constantly alive to the duty of enhancing the pleasure of our Master, that's in a capital M, so he's talking about the Supreme Lord, by serving him with perfect sincerity. So do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering victory or defeat, and you'll be successful. Your duty is to distribute love of God, and don't be attached to the results. Don't be ecstatic if you succeed, or miserable if you don't succeed. Just do it as a matter of duty. Krishna is sitting in the heart of every living entity, and he will inspire, and you will start the seed, the bhakti lata, growing in the heart of everyone you connect with. So therefore you should distribute Krishna consciousness in that mood. And Prabhupada also had that mood and encouraged us in that mood. Another thing that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was adamant about was distributing books, preaching through books. He had 3 large printing presses, one in Krishnagar, one in Kolkata, and one in Chennai, or Madras. And he told Srila Prabhupada, actually, that the problems in the Gaudiya Math began when the Gaudiya Math became successful and opulent. And as they got assets, specifically big temples with marble on the floor, then immediately the materialistic inclinations in the disciples became ignited, and they started plotting. He told Prabhupada, they're already plotting. He said, there will be fire in the math, because they're already plotting. Prabhupada told us that the 2 main persons, the highest persons, I won't mention any names, in the Gaudiya Math. One of them had a son. He was already training him to be a lawyer. He had his son learn to be a lawyer so that he would have a lawyer who could take up his cause when it went to court. They were already planning how we're going to get the assets, how we're going to get the wealth of the Gaudiya Math. And so Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said to Prabhupada, if you ever get money, print books. Because he saw the books distribution, the book printing as Brihat Mridanga. That your talking may go on for a little while. It may even go on television, and many people may watch. But the books, when they're distributed, they'll go on forever, and they'll be distributed all over. We saw that even that book that Bhaktivinoda Thakur originally sent to McGill University, many years later, when Prabhupada was in Montreal, one devotee got it and gifted it to him. So that book was still there in the library at McGill University. And now Prabhupada's books are everywhere. So many books are everywhere talking about Krishna. So these books, no one fights so much to steal the books, unfortunately. But they definitely fight over wealth. And we need to watch out for that. Prabhupada cautioned us ourselves that we shouldn't think of how we can enjoy, and especially here in Mayapur, now we have such a large establishment. There was one letter that Prabhupada wrote in 1974 when the Lotus building was just being constructed. He said, now we have these nice balconies, and they're all marble, and there's a nice breeze between the Ganga and the Jamuna. Now we can invite thousands of people to come to Mayapur, and they have a place to stay. Because Prabhupada saw they could stay on the balconies. So, I don't think anyone here is staying on the balconies? Nobody. So, but now we see that there's many, many buildings, more coming every day, and they're very nice, very elaborate, some extremely elaborate, being advertised, best facility there. And they cost a lot of money, and people are queuing up to get in. It's very hard to get a room sometimes. So we have to be careful that that doesn't contaminate our mind, that we don't become infatuated with the desire to accumulate wealth, to accumulate buildings even, to accumulate prestige through having material assets. And because this is a great danger, and it comes with growth. It even comes with growth in bhakti. That as we become proficient in bhakti, as we become able to preach to others, to encourage others, other people start to appreciate us, and they start to offer some worship. Right? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he explains that even in the process of bhakti itself, there is some danger that the worship of the person who's actually advancing in bhakti will cause him to fall down. So bhakti itself will bring rewards that will in themselves become dangerous to one's bhakti. So also when we become materially opulent and our movement expands, then assets come, and they have an expression in America, I don't know if they have here, when we keep an honest person honest. That you're supposed to keep things locked up, even when you think that no one around is going to steal anything, because it helps to keep honest people honest. In other words, that people have maybe somewhere externally or generally they're very honest, but if you tempt them enough, then their lower nature will come out, and their honesty will maybe move back a little bit, and their inclination, if they have any inclination to be dishonest, that dishonesty will come forward. So to keep the honest people honest, we don't wave our wealth in front of their face, because it causes enviousness. So Srila Prabhupada also took this idea of printing books. He was very, we all know, he was up until his last breath, literally, translating the Bhagavatam. And he was very, very excited about books when they came out. Whenever a book came out, a new book came out, he would immediately look at it, and he was very, very happy to see. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was also very innovative in his preaching. He had the principles of Krishna consciousness foremost in his mind, and in order to preach Krishna consciousness, he made adjustments. The philosophy that he most embraced, or one of the tenets of the philosophy that he most embraced, was Yukta Vairagya. He was a very, very, I'll read something later, he was very affectionate and very dedicated to Rupa Goswami, and he felt that Rupa Goswami's philosophy of Yukta Vairagya should be applied in the preaching mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so he was famous for having these big theistic exhibits where he would set up dioramas, and even in 1917 he had moving dioramas. I don't know how they moved or what they did, but it said that he used the latest technology, and he made dolls that moved in his exhibitions, and people would come to see these exhibitions of Chaitanya Leela and of Krishna Leela, and he set them up. He liked them. He liked doll making, and that's why Prabhupada also took up that idea of having people come here to Mayapur. At the very beginning, he had Bharadrajan Prabhu and others come here and learn doll making. He liked very much these displays and these dioramas. And Bhaktisiddhanta, that also came from Bhaktisiddhanta. He also refurbished and consecrated, rediscovered the holy places. He went around putting padapits, the feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in different holy places. And we see that Srila Prabhupada also took up that responsibility. He created a trust for rejuvenating the holy places around. He wanted those places to be available to the devotees. And so that was another of that Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had in common. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had his sannyasis wearing overcoats and tailored kurtas, which was unheard of before. And to preach, he put them in motor cars and even in motor boats. He sent them across the sea, which was also unheard of. In order to preach, he smashed these ideas that one had to preach in a certain way or could only preach in a certain way in order to give Krishna consciousness. He was very innovative, and certainly we can all know that Srila Prabhupada was extremely innovative in preaching. He started, when he came to the West, he approached a group of people called hippies. Now, if you look on the internet, I did the other day, what hippies look like. It's even shocking to me now, even though I was one of them, what they looked like. And Srila Prabhupada saw immediately that we liked music, we needed food, we weren't very well fed because we had left home a long time ago, and when we were very young, we didn't know much about cooking. And so Prabhupada, he decided, okay, prasadam and kirtan, that's the way to these people. And by kirtan and prasadam, he changed our hearts. He had total faith in the power of the holy name and in the power of prasadam. And you see, when our Prabhupada asked for people to come and help him from the Gaudiya Math, they weren't willing to go. They couldn't see how it was possible to convert these people to Krishna consciousness. They didn't want to go away from their transcendental place of Vrindavan or Mayapur. They wanted to stay and be sheltered. But Prabhupada was very bold. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very bold. They took great risks in order to preach, and they went to places which were dangerous, spiritually dangerous, and figured out how to make Krishna consciousness available to the people there. And they tailored their work so that people would become attracted to Krishna consciousness. And they received a lot of opposition. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in his preaching, the caste Brahmins especially, the people who were entrenched in that caste system, that rigidified Vinashram Dharma, they opposed Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati very much, even to the point where there were threats on his life. He told Prabhupada, our Prabhupada, that he was told by the police that someone had come and said, we're gonna hurt him, we're gonna kill him, and don't you say anything, we'll pay you a bribe. But they said, no, we can't do that for saintly people. It's too, we don't do that for sadhus. We take bribes, but not for sadhus. So you all better become sadhus, because otherwise you may be in danger. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, when he was preaching, he sent some men to Bangladesh, which was then part of India, and he asked them to preach door to door and start a temple there. And before it was heard that they were in town and they were going to be preaching door to door, the word was sent around to people that they should slam the door in their face. They shouldn't open the door, and if even worse, they should open the door and then slam it in their face. So the brahmacharis were going door to door, the sannyasis were going door to door and preaching, and when they went to someone's door, they'd open the door and slam it in their face. So they wrote Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, what are we supposed to do? How are we going to survive? How are we going to start a temple? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wrote them, even if you have to live on Ganga Jal, you continue to preach, and Krishna, the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, will help you. And sure enough, they eventually got some supporters, and they started a temple there. So also, in Prabhupada's mission, we face still even some very strong opposition. And by the way, even now, even here in Sriram Mayapur, although more subtly than slamming the door in the face, there's still very negative preaching about Westerners and about Malechas from outside, and people of low caste birth, even from inside India, becoming Brahmins and taking up Brahminical positions. And there's subtle condemnation, sometimes not so subtle. For a long time in Vrindavan, Prabhupada would invite different people to come and take prasadam, and they wouldn't eat anything that was cooked by the devotees. I don't know now, it's better in Vrindavan, I don't know here, but there's still people very reluctant to eat anything that's prepared by the devotees. I was told that even recently some devotees from Russia were having a marriage ceremony, and they decided to have part of the marriage ceremony done in one Gaudiya Math temple. And when the priests who were asked to do the jagas saw that they were white people, they weren't Indian people, they made a very small fire, tiny, tiny fire, and they cut out some of the performance of the jaga because they didn't want to perform the jaga for Westerners. So even now it's still going on. It was very overt before, now it's a little bit covert, but still the attitude is there that this blood that runs through our body due to our birth is what actually determines our qualification. There's one story that even on the West, there was a lot of arrests. A lot of people were arrested. We were closed down in airports all over the place. Naveen and Nirada could tell you stories, I'm sure, of the efforts of preaching Krishna consciousness in the West, being chased by, there was one cartoon put in a newspaper in Australia where the devotees came on Harinam and they came back to their van and there were tickets from the police kind of pasted all over. The whole van was covered covered the van with these tickets, that they had to pay. Summons is that they had to pay. There's one devotee named Murari Gupta in America who's a doctor, and he actually joined the Hare Krishna movement when he was very young in Gainesville, Florida. He was going to the University of Florida. And he joined, not necessarily voluntarily, the Radha Damodar party. He was kind of kidnapped onto the Radha Damodar party when he was 17, and he was doing Sankirtan all around the Midwest, and he kept getting arrested in many, many different places. And then, due to his childishness and the circumstances, he left the Hare Krishna movement. He finished the university, he became a doctor, and he became a rather famous doctor. Very qualified doctor. And so he applied and he received a job as being the head of a big hospital, the chief of staff of a big hospital in Miami Beach. And so he went for the interview and he passed and he got the job, and then they did a background check. And they called him in and they said, anyway, I won't say this. They said, we see on your record that there's many, many arrests. arrests in Oklahoma and in Texas. And what is this, 100 arrests? You were never convicted of anything, but you were arrested so many times. What were you doing? And at first, he couldn't even recall what he was doing. But then he remembered it was book distribution. He was distributing Prabhupada's books. And he kept getting arrested again and again. So they said, well, you're going to have to clean your record. You're going to have to expunge your record in order for you to get this job. So you're going to have to do 128 hours of community service. And here's a list of the places that you can do community service. And on the list is the Hare Krishna temple. So he thought, okay, well, they got me in trouble. Maybe they'll get me out of trouble. So he went to the Hare Krishna temple, and he did 128 hours of service, became a devotee again, took initiation from Bhakti Marg Maharaj, and now he does a lot of other service, hopefully not getting arrested. But that scenario was there because, and is still there because, there's opposition due to the strong preaching of Srila Prabhupada and of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada speaks of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He says that, well, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur was getting ready to depart, only 8 days before he left, he gave a speech to his disciples, which I thought was fantastic. Unfortunately, I can't read. It's not very long, but still, I can't read the whole thing. But he spoke to his disciples, and I'll read some of it because it's so nice. He said, this is 8 days before he left, right? On December 23rd, he spoke. With great enthusiasm, preached the words of Sri Rupa Raghunath to everyone. Our ultimately desirable object is to become the dust at the lotus feet of the followers of Sri Rupa. All of you remain united in allegiance to the Ashray Vigraha, the spiritual master, in order to satisfy the senses of the transcendental entity of non-dual knowledge. Everyone with the sole view of worshiping Hari will carry on life in this temporary 2-day material existence in any way possible. Do not give up the worship of Hari, even amidst hundreds of dangers, hundreds of insults, or hundreds of persecutions. Do not become unenthusiastic upon seeing that the majority of people in this world are not accepting the message of Krishna's sincere worship. Never give up the audition that's speaking about, and glorification of the topics of Krishna. They are your own personal worship and your very all in all. Being humble like a blade of grass and patient like a tree, constantly glorify Hari. We are nurturing a desire to dedicate this good-for-nothing body in the Sankirtan sacrifice of Sri Krishna Chaitanya and his associates. We are not at all desirous of any heroism in fruitive actions or religion, but our real condition is to be at the dust of the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Prabhu, birth after birth. This is our all in all. The line of Bhakti Vinod will never be closed. With even more enthusiasm, you should become engaged in preaching the desire of Bhakti Vinod's heart. Among you, there are many capable and accomplished men. We have no other desire at all. These are our only words. Taking a blade of grass between my teeth, I fall down and again pray that I may become the dust of the feet of Sri Rupa, birth after birth. This is the end, the last paragraph. In this world, we do not have any attachment or aversion towards anybody. All the arrangements of this world are momentary. That supreme desideratum, and I looked that up in the dictionary, it means that thing which is essential to your existence. So the supreme desirable object is indispensably necessary for every single person. May all of you, with one aim and in a single voice, attain the right of serving the original Ashraya Vigraha, spiritual master. May the flow of thought of Sri Rupa's followers stream over the world. May we never, in any condition whatsoever, show aversion to the sacrifice of chanting the Sankirtan of Sri Krishna. If there is ever increasing attachment for this, perfection on all sides will be achieved. May all of you, by the earnest pursuance of Sri Rupa's followers, preach the words of Sri Rupa Raghunath in a fearless voice with supreme enthusiasm. So that was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's last lecture that he gave his disciples 8 days before passing from this world. Very similar mood to Srila Prabhupada's mood, that we should just preach. And by preaching, by giving Krishna consciousness to others, our Krishna consciousness will come automatically. Prabhupada used to use that word, automatically. That it will happen organically. We don't have to worry. We don't have to worry about our siddhadeha. We don't have to worry about chasing after, Prabhupada said, chasing after Krishna in some bush in Vrindavan. We just need to distribute love of Godhead on behalf of Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then, 2 days before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's departure, he asked his disciples to form a governing body commission. He said to them that they should form with 10 or 12 men a GBC to manage their institution. And they never did it, because they were already planning. They already had a line up. They were waiting for Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to leave, and they already had their legal sights set on his property and the property of the Gaudiya Math and how they were going to divide it up amongst them. So Srila Prabhupada says, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, at the time of his departure, requested all his disciples to form a governing body and conduct missionary activities cooperatively. He did not instruct a particular man to become the next Acharya, but just after his passing away, his leading secretaries made plans without authority to occupy the post of Acharya, and they split in 2 factions over who the next Acharya would be. Consequently, both factions were asara, useless, because they had no authority, having disobeyed the order of the spiritual master. Despite the spiritual master's order to form a governing body and execute the missionary activities of the Gaudiya Math, the 2 unauthorized factions began litigation that is still going on after 40 years with no decision. So we should be careful that we don't disobey Srila Prabhupada's very strong desire to establish a GBC. And he did that seeing what happened to the Gaudiya Math and being very sad that it happened. He wanted a different future for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which means that we, as followers of Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, that we as his followers, we have to become free from the desire for profit, adoration, and distinction. We have to become free from any motive except to do service on behalf of our Guru and on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we can become like that, if we can become motivated like that, then our mission will be successful. Prabhupada's mission will be successful. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's mission will be successful. And we'll all go meet in that ISKCON in the spiritual world, where there won't be any fighting, hopefully. Hare Krishna. So one other thing I wanted to show just briefly is there's a very nice little book, Upakyane Upadesh. And this shows another side of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because he's famous, and I read some things, that he preaches in very erudite language, right? Very powerful, strong language, big words. But he also told a lot of stories. And Srila Prabhupada used many of those stories. in his preaching. Actually, I was reading this book, and I think there's not one that I hadn't heard Prabhupada say somewhere, in some form, maybe a little bit morphed. So I just want to read one, because I thought it was very applicable to our Prabhupada's mission in Krishna consciousness, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's mission in sending Srila Prabhupada to the West. He said, there was once a landlord, I'll just tell the story. There was once a landlord who had servants, and his servants were constant. There was a tremendous attrition rate. They were quitting on him. He couldn't get one that would stay for a very long time. So he was very distraught, because he would train them up and then they would leave, and he didn't know what to do. So he went to a friend and he said, I don't know what to do. I keep hiring these servants. They don't stay for very long. After a couple of days, they leave. And I can't get anything done because I train them up and they won't take any responsibility. As soon as they get some hard work, they're out of here. So his friend said, what you should do is you should serve them very, very good quality rice and ghee. And then they'll become so addicted to eating these nice prasadam that they'll never leave. And so he was a little skeptical, but he took up the instruction because it was going to cost him some money, But he was rich, it didn't matter. So what he did was he hired some good men, and he started to feed them every day this very nice prasadam, nice rice and ghee. And he fed them like that for a long time, a couple of weeks. And then gradually, they became attached to the prasadam. And then gradually he increased their responsibility, their workload. So at first they tried to say, oh, I'm not going to work for you anymore. And they left. But then they came back because they couldn't find anywhere where they could get such nice prasadam. So despite the fact that they were trying to find another employer, they couldn't find an employer who would give them nice prasadam. So they came back and they said, okay, well, we work because we like very much this nice prasadam. And then they became more and more engaged in active service. So Prabhupada used that tactic, and we continue to use it today, perhaps, that by giving nice prasadam, we should work. Not that we should take prasadam and then just sit and go to sleep. We should take prasadam, nice prasadam, and then we should work very hard to preach on behalf of our boss, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, our master, the Supreme Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and our spiritual master. So thank you very much. I'll stop there. Maybe there's some questions. I don't know. Hare Krishna. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada ki. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna. Everyone is running out to have nice prasadam. Oh, no, it's a fast day. Is it? Yeah, it's a fast day. Fast day. No nice prasadam. Yeah, sure. If there's a question, I'll be happy. Does someone have a question?
Thank you. In your inspiring lecture at the beginning, at the beginning of your inspiring lecture, you brought up the...
Harbo, can you keep the talk down because it's impossible to hear? Thank you.
You brought up the incident where there was this debate between Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and then the debate between Vaishnava versus Brahmin. Right? That debate, in one way, we can translate into a tension between bhakti on one side, as the primacy of bhakti on one side, as opposed to considerations of mind and body, or material considerations that restrict bhakti,
yes,
right? And so I was wondering if you think that in the Gaudiya Vaishnava world today, in our context, in the world of ISKCON, do we see still today, in our context, this tension?
I really appreciate the tactfulness with which you're asking this question. I can almost feel you trying to find the right words to say it very tactfully. Yeah, definitely. The tension is still there. The tension is still there. And like Prabhupada said when he was asked, how can we figure out how to resolve that tension? He said it takes maturity. And so I find again and again, and you ask me what I think, I won't tell you what I think, because if I say I think, then I have to end the sentence in the closet. But it's apparent that with maturity, we have to analyze not only the tension of the power of bhakti, but also the desire of our Guru Maharaj and our previous acharyas to preach. The combination of the power of bhakti and the desire to distribute that bhakti all over. Because there's also an understanding that the power of bhakti, okay, then I'll go to the place somewhere in the Himalayas or in Vrindavan and I'll just practice bhakti and I'll become, a gopi or whatever and achieve spiritual success. But that wasn't the mission that we inherited. So we have to find the balance between bhakti in our own lives, distributing love of God, having that attitude of magnanimity, that we want to give Krishna. When you study at VIHE, they have a little thing, it's on my bag. It says, learn and teach others. And that was Prabhupada's mission. That was a quote from Rupa Goswami, that would learn and teach others. Give Krishna consciousness and you'll get it. So there's that on one side. And then there's this other thing, the structure of how to deal with the body and the material energy and the structure of Daivi Vinashram Dharma that is necessary to do that to some extent, and how to balance those things. And it requires great maturity in order to find that balance. And the tension is very much there. And as I look at it, what I see is that, Bhakti Tirtha Swami used to say that you need the extremes on both ends to keep the middle balanced. It keeps the people in the middle thinking about, the possible results of extremism. And there's a lot of extremism, and unfortunately in extremism it's vociferous, so you tend to hear it more than you hear other things. But there are mature people considering these things, and I think it will take time. Fortunately now, there are people who've been practicing Krishna consciousness and sincerely serving Lord Chaitanya and the deities all over the world, preaching Krishna consciousness on Prabhupada's behalf all over the world for 50 years, almost 50 years, 45, 50 years. So their maturity is growing, and they're sincere, and their prayer is sincere. So I have great faith that ultimately they'll find that balance. That balance has to be there. And it may be different in different places. What's necessary to preach Krishna consciousness in one part of the world may be different than what's necessary to preach Krishna consciousness in another part of the world. Someone was telling me, one friend I have that preaches in both India and the West, they said to me that in the West, the danger is karma, and in India, the danger is dharma. So in India, people get stuck on doing the dharmic thing, and it becomes rigidified, calcified, putrefied, and it takes people away from Krishna, the flowery word of the Vedas. I was in Chennai for 2 weeks recovering from surgery, and I was giving class there. I had never really spoken in South India before, but every day I was giving class there, and the people were coming and talking to me after the class, and I was shocked to hear some of the things that happen in strict Brahmin families that are still preserved in that Brahminical tradition in South India, that if a priest is offering, one person told me that, because I was incredulous about how some of the things they were saying, and they said, oh, that's nothing. If they're offering a fire sacrifice and they have the Achman cup and the spoon has Ganesh on it instead of Hanuman on it, they won't use it because it's not in their disciplic succession and they don't think it's bona fide. So it gets that dharmic, gets that bad. And then on the other side, karma, materialistic, we're worried, people won't accept us, we have to merge into the population of the West in every conceivable way so that no one notices that we're devotees of Krishna, and then somehow or other we'll get them to take up the process. So you got these two extremes there, and we need to find our way through, and it may be different in different places. We may have to have a different strategy in different places. Hare Krishna. Anybody else? It's late. We should stop. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Oh, there's... How am I supposed to answer that, why he did that? Well, let me channel him and see. I have no idea why why he didn't do it before. But I do know that he saw, maybe, even answering that question, saying the word maybe, I'm like, shut up. He did see that there was a problem developing. And no doubt he was considering strategies in order to ameliorate that situation. But when he talked to Srila Prabhupada about it, when he was not Srila Prabhupada at the time, our Srila Prabhupada, he said, there's going to be trouble. There's going to be fire in the mouth because they're already planning to do. So, he did what he could, and he did it in the way that he thought best. Maybe I don't know. When I say maybe he thought, I think I shouldn't finish the sentence. So I can't speak what was going on in his head. I'm sorry. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. All glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.